All right, thank you very much, everybody. A warm welcome to those attending and to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Finance and Corporate Services Select Committee. My name is Councillor John Riley, and I am the chairman of this meeting. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and online under the live broadcast. For those present in the room and intended to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statements you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to councillors, officers and those speaking today that you should turn the microphone button on when speaking, and this will ensure you can be heard in the room and by those watching online. Bit of housekeeping: we're not expecting the fire drill to go off, so if the alarm does go off, please follow our officer to the fire exits and out of the building and to the designated meeting points. For those in the room, please switch any mobile devices to silent before the meeting starts. Please note that councillors on the committee may use their laptops or tablets during the meeting to view the agenda and paperwork. I'll just ask everyone to identify themselves if we go around the room and start with Councillor Mathers.
Councillor Stuart Mathers.
Councillor Raju Sansarpuri.
Matthew Walbridge, the Chief Digital and Information Officer.
Dan Kennedy, Corporate Director of Central Services.
Andy Evans, Corporate Director of Finance.
Fiona Irvin, Lead Officer for Transformation and Change.
Councillor Kaushik Banerjee.
Councillor Kishan Bhatt.
Councillor Wayne Bridges.
All right, thank you very, very much. Oh,
Anisha Tedji, Democratic Services.
So I didn't mean to forget you, Anisha. Most important person here, pretty much. All right, so if we can go through the agenda, taking the items. So number one, apologies for absence.
No apologies.
Thank you. Declarations of interest in matters coming before the committee, usual ones I expect, but anything in particular? Nope. All right, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. So we have those at page 1. Item 68 is the main one I want to talk about very quickly. Review of our consultation arrangements. This was something that we had sent to us or given to us by full council at an earlier council meeting, and I thought we decided that we would ask that it should, that the response or that the report should be raised at council, because it was council who asked us. The resolution was that the committee agreed the report and its submission to cabinet subject to above comments. Well, I suppose it has to go to cabinet, but I think the recommendation ought to be, and I suppose the next council meeting is in May, so I think what we did say and what we wanted to have happen was that report, which was a pretty good report, I think we all decided, we should say to cabinet that ought to be presented to council, because it was council that had asked us to do it. So if we can sort of add that, and hopefully, I don't know whether it'll get into Thursday's cabinet, hopefully, maybe it will, but I don't know. But certainly that recommendation that it is presented, that the report is presented to council, is something that we were very keen on, I think. But other than that, any comments on the minutes? No? Are they agreed? Thank you very much. Good. So. All right. Number 4. Normally this just doesn't really attract anything, but to confirm that the items of business marked in part 1 will be considered in public, and items in part 2 will be considered in private. All right. I've rearranged the order a little bit because currently item 6, which I'm moving to 8, presentation on cyber security, because of the nature of the things that we're going to hear from Matthew. I'm going to have that heard in part 2, because we'll be discussing tactics and issues around prevention of crime and other matters that we want to not put in the public domain, certainly not at this stage. So what we'll do is we'll do everything else, and then we'll go to item 6, which I've turned into item 8, and Matthew can give his presentation on cyber security in a part 2 session. All right, so that's that one. 4, 5. Right, Council's Transformation and Business Change Programme. You will all have seen the paper to agenda item 5 at page 3, and then we have the presentation, which I think will be on screens, yes, and I believe that Fiona's going to lead on this for the moment, and then the others present will chip in on their bits. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting us along today. I'm just going to make sure the slides are moving. So basically I'm going to cover a bit about our team, our new team, the ambition of the team, the overview, the resources we have, the governance we've put in place for transformation, and then give you a flavour of some of our current projects, which we'll do in turn. And then really talk about the financial side of the projects, and happy to take questions. So our ambition is to create a sustainable council that is easy to do business with through a programme of facilitated transformation and business change, which delivers a return on investment underpinned by behavioural and cultural change. So a lot of our transformation work is around making it easy to do business with the council. So whilst we put our residents first, we are adding on being easy to do business with. And we want to try and find quick wins through our programme of work, and to totally transform the way services are delivered to make them more cost effective and efficient, but also to give the residents a great experience, but also to give our officers really meaningful work. So for example, with not lots of waste at the moment we have with our numbers of systems, to take out duplicated effort, and for officers to clearly see the link between what they do and the outcomes they have through, for example, better data. So in terms of an overview, so the council does have a long history of transformation. You may recall the BID team that was in place in 2009. And it's fair to say that over the years there hasn't really been the sort of burning platform that there is today in terms of being the need to change how services are delivered, embracing technology and digital, but also being more cost effective. So although the team did deliver some good results, in more recent years it's become more of a critical imperative that we really focus on transformation. So in March 2023 I was appointed to lead on transformation and completely reset the programme. So the sorts of things that I did in conjunction with my colleagues is we've invested and recruited a really skilled and experienced transformational business change team. And within that team I've got some business analysts and data analysts who basically look at the data and the processes. I have project managers, both embedded in the council, and project managers who are brought in with specialist skills, and a PMO, the Project Management Office, which is really the engine room of all of the projects. We're instrumental in recruiting Matthew, who's been an excellent appointment as our Chief Digital and Data Officer. Working with Matthew, we worked up the business case for the £10 million capital investment into technology, digital and data. And part of our work has been designing the digital roadmap and trying to think what the experience will be for residents and for staff over a 3-year horizon. We also have invested in an experienced coach because we believe it's very important that we look at the cultural change needed within the council and behavioural change. So a lot of the work that our coaches do is take the digital and data projects or take the change projects and make sure that the change is embedded through training and development and through education. Sorry, this is... Can you manually click us on? It's just not. No. Sorry about this. Thank you.
There is a strange elliptical irony about digital presentations where the presentation doesn't quite work.
If you're okay, I'll carry on with the paper copies. So in terms of the governance is very important for the monitoring of our projects. So one of the things that was really missing was that whole life cycle of a project. So we put in quite a rigorous process, although it can be quite agile as well. So we have a concept stage where we float an idea. We have a blueprint where we work that idea up into more of a feasibility study, and then a business case where we actually agree exactly what we're going to do and what the benefits will be. We formally close out our projects, and we do benefits realisation tracking on a quarterly basis. And that process has been embedded now since March of last year, and is really making a difference in terms of the rigour of projects that are not going straight to business case, because actually the business case doesn't fly or isn't accepted as a direction of travel. So at the earliest stage we can decide that some projects aren't appropriate to be taken forward. We have quite a lot of regular dialogue on our change portfolio. So on a weekly basis CMT meet and have the Service Development Board, and that's chaired by the Chief Executive, and that gives an opportunity for officers to present their projects and have decisions made in a very quick way. We also have project dashboards, so every project is reviewed. I have oversight on all projects and trying to make sure there's the synergies between relevant projects, which we'll come on to later on, and that we're sharing lessons learned. We also meet with the Cabinet Portfolio Lead for Transformation, Councillor Goddard, and the Leader of the Council on a regular basis. And full Cabinet have oversight of all of the project progress reports, which go on a monthly basis. In terms of current projects, we are going to take you through a few of those in a moment, but we've got 27 live projects at the moment, split across all of the service areas. And we are quite adaptable. When a new project comes in, we'll look at how the best way is to resource that. And most of the project work is capitalised, so it doesn't come out of the general fund. So as I say, most of the projects are all lined up about efficiency. It might be about the MTFF savings. There's invest to save, cost avoidance, and income generating projects as well. So there is a slide on the council strategy. I appreciate it's quite small, so we will get a version sent across to you all. But basically, it's very important that all of our project portfolios line up to the council strategy. So that's something that's important to us, to make sure that we're not drifting off and doing things that are not in line with the strategy. So I'm going to ask my colleagues to go through a number of the projects with you. They're in a summary slide. So first of all, one of our first projects is Project Neptune, which is our housing and homelessness project. And I'd just like to ask Dan if he'd like to explain a bit about that project.
Thank you, Fiona. So this is within the commitment within the council strategy for safe and strong communities. And we started this project in August following a review, and it is, in essence, in summary, it's about how we improve the customer experience, the resident experience, when they're faced with homelessness or need housing advice. And it's also ultimately about how we can prevent homelessness. Still fairly early days. We're just about to bring really the first phase to a conclusion. But some of the work that we've done that will actually provide a strong platform for improvement is redesigning the process end to end. So we've got a stronger triage, first point of contact approach now, working with Lou Forster in the customer contact centre about how we can improve the advice and assistance at a very early point, rather than customers, residents moving a long way through the process and waiting for updates. So that's some of the improvements we're making. System improvements as well. So we've recently, with Matthew's help, have just transferred from an existing casework system to a new casework system, and that then provides us with a strong platform for performance management and a good use of data, which again gives us the strong foundation for better understanding the need that's presenting and actually being more predictive and more preventative in terms of our forward look. So that's the next exciting phase of the project that's coming. And that will lead to a much stronger basis for business intelligence. Strengthening management oversight as well, so introducing some practice changes very shortly, where there will be regular casework reviews and quality assurance of casework. So that's a common model that's used in other parts of the services in the council for casework management. And then the other area that we're absolutely focused on is how we can increase supply. So building up a sort of 3 to 5 year pipeline program of new affordable housing, building stronger partnerships with housing associations and private sector landlords too. If we have good supply, affordable supply, we'll be able to resolve homelessness very, very quickly as it presents. At the moment, the wait is too long for suitable housing, and so we're investing a lot of time working with our corporate director of place to build those relationships and build that pipeline. So that will actually be a significant part of the programme. That's pretty much it.
Thanks, Dan. So some of the work our team will have done with that particular project is we would have been involved in the review process, the process design reviews, looking at the data, and then coming up with the project plan and helping manage that with the service, very much working with the service. So that's been a particularly strong project in terms of the cost that would have been attracted to this particular service area had we not done the review in the first place. In terms of the fostering review, Matthew, would you like to cover that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So over the past 6 months, we've conducted a review of fostering. So we've got roughly about 400-ish, bit less than that, looked after children in Hillingdon, and they're some of the people that deserve, some of our most vulnerable people, some of the people that deserve our support as a council in terms of their well-being, their outcomes, and their happiness and health. So there's a but there. We have recruitment and retention issues around our foster carers. A lot of foster carers will go through IFAs, which are independent fostering agencies, because they onboard them more quickly, perhaps provide better incentives for them to be foster carers. But from a financial perspective, a residential placement in Hillingdon costs around £5,000 a week, so it's a significant cost for that cohort of people. And what we did was we conducted a review, so it was a diagnostic, looking at the business processes, did some user research, understanding benchmarking, so what was best practice out there, understanding the financial data, the data around potential foster carers, and worked out actually we need to change our approach. So part of the approach was to attract more foster carers. So have more foster carers as part. And we had the launch last week in terms of launching the new service. Really popular. We had some really great feedback. But we want to attract more by better marketing, better incentives. So giving both better a financial package for being a foster carer, but also providing a better support for the foster children. So things like more days out, better support, better learning and development if you're a foster carer. So a better package if you're both a child in being fostered, or you're a foster carer. We looked at a better process. So sometimes councils can be quite clunky in terms of its processes, and sometimes things take too long. And actually, when you stack us up against the private sector, so the IFAs, is we've looked at a fast track service. So we'll be able to, when someone is interested in becoming a foster carer, we can onboard them more quickly and get them to become a foster carer. And once we've got them to be a foster carer, we keep them as a foster carer by giving them the support and the incentives to be there. Why? Well, there's obviously financial benefits. So we're looking at making a £2 million saving over this financial year and next financial year by attracting 25% more foster carers, and the saving is around £260,000 a year for each child that is fostered through us rather than a residential placement. So that is a significant cost. But it's not all about the money. Sometimes you can do great transformation and it saves money, but it also proves a better customer experience. And fundamentally, the customer experience is the better experience if you're a foster carer, but also if you're a foster child. You've got better outcomes, you're healthier, you're happier, and you've got the council there to support you. So this is a really exciting project about how we've looked at a good diagnostic, we've looked at the processes, we've looked at everything around what we could do better, and pretty much changed everything to look at some incremental benefits for some of the changes in the processes, some of the fundamental bit around incentives, and more fundamentally looked at from a child's perspective about what improves their outcomes. So as a team, we're really proud. We did it jointly with Emma Kavanagh, who's the wonderful head of service. We did it with Fiona's team and with my team. We all worked together and we came up and it was approved by the Cabinet and we launched it last week. So something we're really proud of.
Thank you. And the next project is around our UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and one of the roles of my team is to project manage that we maximise this particular grant, which Dan's going to cover.
Thank you, Fiona. So this is quite a significant amount of grant funding, about 1.7 million over 3 years, which includes capital and revenue funding. And two key areas about how we can improve our communities and place. And also the second area of focus is grant funding is how can we support local businesses. So in terms of the first area, significant number of improvements already delivered to date, about 2,400 square metres of green and green spaces have been improved as a result of this programme. We've recruited thus far about 20 volunteers out of 50 as a target over the 3-year period to improve those green and blue spaces. And so far we've planted through this programme 232 trees across the borough, which is tremendous. Lots more to do, but it's really encouraging. It's got off to a great start, and this discipline and support we've had from Fiona's team has meant that we've been able to maximise the benefit and align the programme to those priorities that matter to our residents and as set out in our council plan.
So the next project, our employability project, which supports a thriving economy, is on here because it's at concept stage. So we've basically been looking at how we can maximise employment opportunities for residents within the borough. This is particularly pertinent to, for example, the housing clients that present. So once they're ready to start to look for work, how do they get the support to do that? So we actually have a very good employability offer within the council, which is heavily grant funded based on outcomes. But one of the things that we've identified is that there's not the link between the employment opportunities in the council and employment opportunities in the borough. So we have a very strong adult learning programme, for example, to help people become qualified carers, and we have a huge demand for carers in the council. So how do we join up that resident with meaningful work opportunities? So that is at the early stage, but we do see the benefit now of actually engaging with businesses. Those businesses might come in through planning, for example, if they're building a new warehouse. It might be that we look at opportunities when we're doing the Regen programme to build in local employment opportunities and apprenticeships, for example. So there's a lot more work we can do in this area, and we do believe there's more grant funding that we can attract to support this work. And it does mean that we can have residents who are able to look after themselves and be less of a burden on the council. And the last project, which I know is most of you are aware of, but for a brief update, and Matthew's going to cover where we are with the digital project.
So when I came to committee in February, I talked about this at length, so I'm not going to go through it in a massive amount of detail. But in terms of how we're improving the customer experience, how we're becoming more digitally enabled, as you know, that we've improved the experience of everybody through better voice automation, better web chat functionality within our website. So nobody wants to be hanging on waiting for the phone to be answered, going through to a contact centre. So for the people that are able to do things digitally, now you can do things through forms and through web chat to make the experience better. We're not perfect. We're still on a journey, as I explained back in February, that we're still doing more work in terms of our digital inclusion strategy by helping out the people that perhaps can't get online or find it difficult, by giving people access to either devices, connectivity to make sure they can go online, but also the skills to be able to help them. And also there are places in the borough, for example libraries, that enable people to use the web freely and easily. We're also making sure that most of our transactions can be done online in the first place. So for the vast majority of our residents that can do things online, over 75% of our transactions are you can do them online now. And also, obviously, we have the My Account functionality as well, so you can personalise your needs and have a single sign-on to find out what you need. But again, we know that over the next year to 2 years, we need to improve our website. We know that there's always more that we can do around digital inclusion, and we're going through a programme of improving service by service how we give more digital functionality to our residents while supporting our vulnerable people through a digital inclusion programme. So we're in an exciting place that we're improving our digital experience month on month, week by week. But we also know that that's reliant on understanding resident and customer feedback, so continually engaging with our residents about how they can go online, but also shaping our services around people's digital needs moving forward.
Thanks, Matthew. If I can just pass over to Andy, who's going to cover the financial case for service transformation.
Yeah, so I'll be fairly brief. I've only got one slide there, and I'll give a bit of context to some of the narrative on the slide. And I think we deliberately put this at the end because it was really to reiterate the point about transformation or change not simply being about delivering or saving money. It really is, at the heart of it, is doing things more effectively, efficiency, and securing value for money and better outcomes for residents and clients. However, the local government financial position offers a really important context to what we're doing and is influencing to some measure, some degree, the prioritisation of the projects. And the transformation programme is very closely aligned and integrated into our financial planning processes and obviously the budget reduction. As the report notes, the scope of the transformation programme is increasingly broad. It spans from simple structural reviews to looking at delivery models, exploring commercial opportunities where appropriate, and ensuring that the council's assets are utilised as efficiently as possible to maximise the value secure. And as you've heard throughout the presentation, underpinning all these initiatives and the work we do is a material capital investment and grasping the opportunities that are available from the movement forward in digital technologies. As I've noted on the slide, the council has a really strong record on delivering savings, but in common with other local authorities has had to deliver this over a really long period of time now, and naturally they become more difficult and challenging to achieve and complex. Hence why we have the transformation team and programme drawn up in this way. The current financial outlook, as I've referred to, remains challenging, and obviously there's a degree of estimates in the figures that we've used at this time given the wider political context, but we're expecting to have to save 52 million over the next 5 years based on our current projections. In many ways the greatest challenge for Hillingdon, aligned to other local authorities, is not just the funding system in which local government operates, but it's really the ongoing risk and challenge provided by inflationary and demand-led pressures across services such as housing and social care. But as you've seen, the transformation programme is reaching into those areas, and they are particularly complex and challenging because they operate within a very tight statutory and regulatory framework. And just to round off in terms of sort of quantums, just to emphasise the extent of those pressures, across the last 2 financial years, consolidating inflationary and demand-led pressures, the council's had to add around £63 million to the budget to try and meet those challenges. And obviously there remains, given the ongoing pressures and challenges that we're seeing in the external environment, that will not necessarily be sufficient to deal with the level of demand we're experiencing, hence the ongoing need to challenge and transform those services where possible.
Thanks, Andy. So that brings us to the end of the presentation, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you. Quite a tsunami of information there. Okay. I think that what is really being driven at here is looking at all the things that the council does and traditionally does and statutorily has to do, and looking at better, more efficient ways of doing it and delivering that to our residents. And that's essentially what the transformation programme is all about. And as you say, it's still fairly early days yet, but how do you think we measure progress? I won't say success yet, because although there are some successful things, it's still probably too early to talk about successes as such, but progress certainly. And also early enough, or getting to residents early enough so that to a large extent they can do things for themselves and are able to do things for themselves. So are we having surveys of where people think we are at the moment? Are we having communication with our residents to see what their experience is so far? And how's that side of things working?
So I think in terms of resident engagement, that has been really important. If I take the fostering project, we did reach out to users of the service, people who'd maybe made an inquiry and not followed it through, the children themselves. So we do engage through focus groups, in surveys, but in small groups, in targeted groups, rather than a more wider sort of resident survey. In terms of progress, we do track the progress of the project, but most importantly it's the benefits tracking, it's the actual outcome and making sure we've delivered what's in the business case, and if we haven't, understanding why we haven't delivered the outcomes desired.
I think I think the fostering thing is quite an interesting one. And did Matthew say that there was an event coming up, or you've just had one, or?
Just had one last week.
Okay. The point there, and some of the things that Matthew said about that, the sort of offshoot benefits of getting more foster carers, and the benefits as a consequence for the children and for those who are fostered, as opposed to being in some sort of institutionalised care. If you sort of forget the cost element, the outcome element is very important and might be difficult to quantify, but nevertheless is really, really important. And I think that part and parcel of getting across the benefits of the whole transformation project is to highlight those sorts of wins and those which sometimes are kind of lost in the so you've got a particular project, and we've looked at it in a different way completely to what it has done in the past, which is of itself a beneficial issue. But actually, the offshoot benefits and the consequences need to be highlighted to show how that's been of benefit. So, in addition to everything else, are we in a position, which I'm not always very good at, of explaining the progress or successes as we go along in order to bring people with us?
Yes, and I think the fostering event last week, we got immediate feedback from the foster carers through a survey, but there'll be regular interventions because we need to make sure that the initiatives are right, that they're working, that they're having the desired effect. So that project won't close for some considerable time. Other projects that we've done in the past where we've closed them off, again, it's just making sure that the actual outcomes are delivered and the financial benefits are delivered.
Okay. And of course the other thing is the relationship between the kind of big spend areas of people, as it were. So, and those probably are more in terms of the statutory responsibilities. And it's both ends of the age group. So you've got adult social care and you've got vulnerable children at both ends of the sort of age market, which are large percentages of spending areas. And perhaps you might want to talk a little bit about how, even within those areas, which are high spenders, there is opportunity, other than what we've got in foster caring, there is opportunity within the digital transformation programme to be able to make those areas more efficient and more able to be effectively dealt with as far as residents are concerned.
So another good example is the setting up of the children's residential home. So we're bringing residential care in-house. So we've knocked down Charvel Lane and we're rebuilding it. We've repurposed Willow Tree Lane, and we've just procured been gifted actually three properties from the NHS to turn into children's residential. So that means we can bring that in-house, and that lowers the cost and means that we've got control over the care. But the link to digital is quite interesting in terms of the technology that Matthew will talk about that we're going to install into those homes.
Yeah, so across children's and adults on both those spectrums, we're looking at the moment of trialling some different ways to think about how we can support people So a lot from an adult's perspective, through independent living, so providing people with devices to monitor how they are, to get better responses, and to support them to live at home longer. And these are relatively cost-effective devices that give a plethora of information, but also help the elderly resident to help them support themselves, but also with a circle of care around them. From a children's perspective, things like equipping the children's homes with the right modern technology. So when we're kitting out the new buildings, making sure they've got good access, they've got the right kind of devices, and it's really important that children that are in our care have the best possible start in life. They're helped to be supported around their friends groups, their family groups, and a lot of that is through technology at the moment, as we all know. With kids at the moment, is connectivity and devices are really, really important to those. So investing in how we do that, but also the right tech care for adults and children through the right kind of support and the right kind of devices that people need. Also making sure that up front we do the right kind of assessments to understand people's needs in the first place. So having better professional support and a better understanding of people's needs, so we can direct the right kind of care to the right kind of people to understand what they need to support their needs more quickly, but also more cost effectively. Some of that's technology, some of that's through, we're always looking at how we have better practices. So if we're thinking about our processes, our practice, we're always looking in those cohorts of, as you said, the adults and children's, about how we improve. And generally throughout the council, in terms of transformation, we're always looking at how, as officers, we become more productive, how we have the best possible processes, and we have the best possible systems to be able to support how we can support our most vulnerable people, because there's always improvements that we can make. And as I talked about in February, is technology's changing on a rapid basis. It's making our life easier to be more productive, to rationalise some of our processes, to help us be more productive, but also fundamentally to go back to support the end user, the customer, the resident, to support their outcomes by giving the right kind of care.
Councillor Mathers.
Thank you for your presentations. It was very, very helpful. So much to think through that my brain has been wearing away. I think that the bit that isn't as clear in the presentation, not intentionally, of course, is how do you get to that point of feasibility? You sit in the room, there's loads of ideas going on. I know you have a set methodology, but I guess with finances so tight, and with the need for I use the right language, for savings over the council's medium-term financial plan. I suppose my first question is, how do we ensure that we're backing the right horse? How do we make sure that we're not moving the cost onto other public services or other departments accidentally? And what checks and balances are there to ensure that we have the resilience before we start a project to make sure there's contingency if it isn't the right path? Because we're talking about large amounts of money. I mean, the digital transformation project is millions. And if we get that wrong, and I'm not saying Hillingdon's done this, but there is, in public services, there's been a number of IT contracts that have gone south through different government departments or other places and spaces. How do we find then, at what points are we able to quickly step back and re-engage a different pathway? Or how do we find the resource then to come up with a different plan that may cost as much in millions to transform the service in the way that it's needed?
So I will defer to Matthew on the second point. I think in terms of the right projects, I think it's a really good question, because we started off with the project because maybe there was data demand-led issues in housing, for example, or we saw an opportunity in fostering. But going forward, as part of the zero-based budgeting work that we've been doing with Grant Thornton, I think that gives an added level of assurance as to the way forward. So we're starting to map out all of the initiatives that will come out of that, getting those costed through, and then thinking about the lead times for those and creating a bit more of a roadmap. So there's probably going to be a bit more structure to the projects going forward, and really probably in line with Andy's comments earlier, is making sure that we're hitting the projects with the biggest return. So, we're going to have to look at adults and children and the costs For example, in adults, should we look at, we're looking at our commissioning model there. We've very successfully landed our grants to commissioning project, which is again focused on both outcomes and better value for the council. So I think going forward, and we're happy to come back and present that roadmap when that's been developed. But in terms of particularly the IT and the resilience, would you like to pick up, Matthew?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of how do we understand how we're doing the right projects, is we've got a robust methodology as an organisation for how we understand what we do, and I'll talk about that for a few minutes. Is we have a prioritisation matrix that sits across transformation and my digital world, of understanding which projects we do and understanding their value, and that looks both politically, organisationally, and how we do things. So that enables us to make sure we're doing the right projects at the right time, because there's only ultimately X amount of capacity to do X amount of projects, and we've got to make sure we do the projects that are of most value to our residents, but also make sure we're making the right savings to have balanced budgets year on year. We have a methodology for delivering projects. So, in my world, we use the standard GDS methodology for how we're delivering digital projects, but we have a more waterfall methodology for some of our other projects. So we have good, robust sets of approaches, and we have a really robust methodology that goes from concept through to blueprint through to business case, which is again a robust way of understanding the benefits of projects, and goes through the detailed understanding, as Fiona mentioned, through things like the fostering project. Is we're doing the right analysis, we're understanding the right option, and with all of this, and we talked about it in fostering, is we're looking at what our peers are doing, because we're looking at what's best out there all the time. Personally, I'm always looking what can we learn from others, what's good out there, because you're mitigating risk by understanding what other people are doing and learning from people's mistakes. So we're always out there looking in public services to learn from some of our peers. We have really good governance as well. So in terms of ultimately, 4 of us here are corporate management team members, and we're understanding that we're not putting demand onto each other's services. We're understanding it from a customer point of view and an organisation point of view, and we don't think vertically about the organisation as in the vertical structures that we work ourselves in. We understand from a customer journey point of view how we interact and how our customers and our residents interact across the council. And homelessness is quite a good example of, you can move homelessness from out of a housing directorate to a social care directorate, depending on how the process goes. Well, we're really clear that we're at the moment having joined up teams to understand what's best for our residents. In terms of the bit around, it's probably less about IT contracts, it's probably more about our projects in its totality. So I'll cover contracts in a minute. So we fail fast. There's got to be a recognition that local authorities do get stuff wrong. It's not getting the big stuff wrong, and having the ability to stop and change projects as they go along. And every time I write a business case, then the project's not always going to be delivered in the way that the business case is set out. That's why we have the governance that sits around, and ultimately, we as corporate management team take accountability for the delivery of all the big transformation projects. Is we understand what we need to change, whether we need to stop them, whether we need to slightly divert course, whether we need to put money, whether we need to put less money in them, because we're constantly reviewing our projects and constantly understanding the dependencies between the projects as well. So again, got a robust approach to that is well known in the public sector that works. Ultimately, also, I take accountability for all the IT contracts and making sure that we've done our due diligence, both through the governance, but both through understanding the market. I can pretty safely say that I understand the digital and the IT market, and we're constantly talking to suppliers, understanding what's out there, and we have a good commercial view as well of understanding our contracts, making sure we've got the right breakpoints, making sure that we're robustly reviewing our contracts. We have over 150 contracts in the digital IT and customer experience space. Some of them are tiny little things, some of them are great big contracts, but we review them all the time to understand how well they're working, whether we can replace them, what's better out there in the market. So again, it's through having really quality officers, really quality governance that you mitigate risk, and again, it's the accountability that sits at the top table that we all understand what we're doing, when we're doing it, and how it all works together. So that's why we have Fiona here from a transformation perspective, tying us all up together in terms of how we work, but also making sure we've got great governance and a great approach to make sure we make the right decisions and we can change decisions as we go.
All right, thank you. Councillor Batt.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again for that presentation. It was really useful. It's clear that we've got quite a few exciting projects. Certainly I wasn't really aware of some of them myself, so I want to touch on resident engagement. Do you feel it would be useful to set out this programme and these projects on our social media channels and perhaps engage with residents online, such as live webinars or e-learning videos on our website, or by proper outreach to local resident associations, or even through information to our local councillors to disseminate? I feel like almost the irony here is that we almost need a tech platform for our residents to access to learn about the projects that the council are delivering and sort of convey the benefits of this programme in the best way, and also perhaps an educational piece on how these projects can be best utilised by our residents. And also the second question I had was again on the technology, and it's about the supplier point regarding the technology. I know that previously we were creating sort of our own software, especially with the members new sign on to log sort of our issues for our residents. I'm just wondering if we're moving away from that now and actually using sort of third-party suppliers where we can have greater accountability over and oversight over what they do.
Thank you. So on the point of communications, Dan, I think it would be worth talking about the strategy.
Thank you. Fiona took the words out of my mouth, back to the mic before I did. So as a corporate management team, we are actually reviewing our communication strategy and the messaging, and we are packaging up a number of campaigns around some priority areas, which includes the transformation programme and some other areas. I mean, the fostering example that we heard earlier was a fantastic example of a really proactive communications and engagement campaign that we've approached, and we want to roll out that model. Importantly, and the link to customer or resident engagement and resident experience is that we can measure what difference all of these programs make through proactive communications to shift perception, to shift behavioural change, but also that we engage to actually get some measure of what difference we've made and where some of those messages are landed. So it's actually work in progress. On the 1st of May, the corporate management team have set aside some time to review the draft strategy and a selection of campaigns which are being worked up, and then over the next few months we'll be rolling that out at pace and using some of the new platforms, the new channels that you mentioned, Councillor Batt.
And on the point on members' inquiries, we actually, I will defer to Matthew on that point, but we are looking at doing some trends analysis on member inquiries just to see what's coming in, and because the volume is a lot, and trying to work out how we can help signpost things in a different way. But in terms of the technology, Matthew, where are we with the system?
Yeah, so let me paraphrase your question. It's whether we buy or build systems, and actually I think it's the opposite of what you're saying, is we buy too much. We have 150 contracts, and we have big contracts, you know, Microsoft, System C, Civica, NEC, so we have some big meaty contracts in there. We also buy quite a lot of smaller third-party systems, and even when we are things like members' inquiries, they're still built on a platform, and we're still getting pretty much a third party to build them for us. So part of the digital strategy is to take back control and build some of this ourselves. So understanding case management, workflows, and as you all know, it's not necessarily the cost of the contract, it's the cost of change, because, you know, resident experience, customer experience, technology is changing on a rapid basis, that if you're locked in to a vendor, it costs more to change things to meet the needs of the organisation month by month, year by year, and that's significant when we want to work in a transformation programme, that we want to change our processes to make sure they're as optimal as possible. So we're looking at a mixed approach at the moment. We're looking at working with our big vendors. For example, we Cabinet agreed that we're signing a new contract with System C, who provide our social care systems, as well as integrating a lot of our education systems together. We are doing more work with Microsoft, so we're doing a device refreshers again approved by the Cabinet, but also working with them on how we integrate more of our back office systems together, so we can automate and integrate to drive productivity, and working with AI. We're also looking at working with some of our other big suppliers to drive the benefits out of how they modernise themselves. But against that, we're looking at again, building things ourselves, whilst scouring the market, if I was to use that term, is looking at what are the best suppliers out there at the moment. Like, what's the stuff that's really going to improve the transformation and the resident experience and our productivity moving forward. And that is looking at some of the more niche third-party suppliers out there at the moment that can provide things like better analytics, because they have the ability to ingest more third-party data that we wouldn't be able to afford as an individual organisation, and how we translate that into making better decisions in what we do. There are, and as you will personally know, there are great AI-based companies that are coming on the market, that are coming into the public sector day by day, week by week. And again, we're always looking across local government, but across public services, of what's really working at the moment to bring those into the organisation to provide those, again, better customer experience, better savings, better income by the right targeting and the better analytics and the better digital processes. So it's a mixed approach at the moment, but based off that is understanding need, understanding requirements. So back to the question about how do we engage people, completely, we need to design our services around our residents, and we can always do better at that, in engaging people, helping residents, understanding their data, understanding how we work with them to co-design the services. And that's what the transformation program's about in principle, is going through each of the services, understanding the needs of residents, but designing the services based on modern technology, understanding better data, but more fundamentally looking at processes, productivity, all those things together. And sometimes that's a supplier, sometimes that's doing things ourselves. And again, that's why we have the governance to go through the business case to understand whether it's a buy or build decision.
All right, thank you. Councillor Mathers and then Councillor Banerjee.
Thank you, Chair. There's two areas that I think we all endorse, but I think maybe interpret slightly differently. So one is around quality and one is around sustainability. So I've no doubt that there is cost analysis done around not making sure that any transformation doesn't increase revenue costs year on year on year on year. We do know at some point there will need, and I know we can't project too far into the future when it comes to local government finance, but there will need to be a refresh of all this transformation with more transformation. So I'm always interested in how you are building in the life cycle of things, so that we don't get, in 5 years' time, if everything needs to be renewed at the same time, for example, a huge asset sale, a huge bill in order to pay for the refresh of round 2 of transformation, because technology is going to outpace all of us the rate it's growing, and there will be very new things in future years. So it's just kind of the planning for future-proofing and sustainability of some of this. I know it's difficult in a financial sense, but making sure that not everything that is transformed now ends at the same time. And the other aspect is, it does feel like, through necessity of finance, we have stopped transforming services for quality, and we are focusing predominantly on the highest value of return of savings. And I'm not saying that there's no quality in what's being delivered. I am definitely not saying that. But do we see in the near future an opportunity where we may revisit with transformation projects just on the basis of quality, which could mean just more investment and maybe higher revenue costs? And I know that's finance permitting, but there are some services that just need a refresh. I think a good example of this is potentially the customer service journey, the digital journey, which needs to come with modernisation. But there are definitely other areas where we deliver services to residents that need some in-house expertise to transform the way in which that service could be delivered or run. So I know, for example, and I know there's often things done with the ASPEC team, and it's not our portfolio, but the challenge of fly tipping has wound us all up for years, and residents alike. And we know there's no quick fix, but if there's a review on it in terms of the quality of what we deliver and how we can, and all of those aspects, it may be it may not lead to cost savings, but it has a huge impact on our residents. And I know the priority at the moment is high value saving returns to sustain the council's finances. I understand that, and that is the environment. But when will we, or can we occasionally drip in the odd one that can transform the impact the council has positively on residents' lives?
So it's quite a long question. So in terms of the latter part, absolutely quality is something, and the projects that we look at very much, take fly tipping is a good example, where I was with Richard Webb, who's got that area today, thinking about how can we better leverage the CCTV footage we get, how can we promote that we're finding more people for fly tipping, how can we, through the comms team. So quality is important, and the way we do our process redesign is thinking about things, as Matthew said, from the resident's point of view, because it isn't all about just cost saving. In the homelessness project, we've discovered that the residents aren't getting a great experience. Yes, there's a lot of them, but we've now discovered that the officers are not suitably equipped to give the best quality experience. So Dan's put in place quite a lot of changes there, particularly around how we do case management and keep residents up to date, and that stops them phoning, which stops failure demand and additional costs. So I very much think quality is at the centre. In terms of the other part of your question, if you can remember it, Matthew, would you like to, in terms of sustainability of this IT?
Let me cover a few points. So it's quite an interesting one on quality. So, fly tipping, reporting issues. So, at the moment we're looking at how do we have better processes, a better customer experience around reporting street scene issues. But a good example from a technology point of view, and you're right, it's moving really quickly at the moment, is we're currently looking at how do we put cameras on our refuse trucks. So, we've got refuse trucks, they cover every single road in the borough all the time. We're looking at cameras that can be put on the refuse trucks, and they can detect things like potholes, lines. They can even detect things like fly tipping, street scene issues, and therefore and attached to CCTV. So sometimes it's better quality is somebody using the things that we've got, but also the incremental benefits of some quite cost-effective technology, but whilst having better processes. So the more rapid understanding of what the issue is from a customer point of view or from our point of view, because we've seen it because we're out in the borough, but also turning around that quickly. And when we're talking about resident engagement, sometimes the failure demand is through us not updating our customers what's happening more quickly enough. So if you've got a missed bin, or if you've reported a fly tip, what's happened with that fly tip. So providing that in more real time, and that's improving the quality of the experience that our residents have. And transformation isn't really in phases. The reality of the world is we're constantly reviewing our services on a regular basis, and some of it from maybe a technology point of view. Sometimes it's stuck in contracts, but we're making sure we sign the right contracts. We're constantly talking to the vendors, but again, the reality is the vendors are still refreshing what they do on a regular basis from a technology point of view. So it's a constant improvement cycle. I mean, again, we're all members of CMT. We're all constantly reviewing all of our services all the time. So it's not a static bit where back in early days of local government transformation, you would do a review, you would implement it, then in 2 years' time you'd go back and look at that service. That's not the mentality we have as Hillingdon. We're constantly reviewing our services all the time. Our financial constraints mean we have to do that, but also from a quality point of view, we're constantly looking at how we improve our services, and again, looking at what's happening in public services means we're taking ideas from other public sector bodies, particularly in local government, and applying some of that learning to what we do. It might be a small improvement, it might be a contractual improvement, it might be a whole redesign of a service, but we're constantly improving, and some of that comes from resident feedback, but also some of that comes back from the feedback from our officers. There's always the encouragement for officers to come and suggest ideas. Sometimes implementing the small things makes a difference to a resident. So it's the how do you put those things together, and that's our transformation programme in a nutshell. So it's constant, it's evolving, and we do it all the time.
All right, thank you. Councillor Banerjee.
Thank you, Chairman, and I just want to echo what Councillor Batts and Councillor Maddy said about the report. It's very informative, so thanks for that. I just wondered if you could elaborate on the idea generation process. So what I mean by that is, how often is that process run, and how quickly can an idea be stood up? So if there is like a change in legislation, or to use like a term that was mentioned in the report earlier this evening, you know, you have a quick win or something that's going to provide rapid benefit. Is this sort of idea process run every quarter, every year? And I'm assuming there's like a long list of ideas. You mentioned 27 projects. Are they sort of triaged regularly, saying actually something needs to sort of go up the importance and priority list, we should actually look at this now? Or is it a static process that we run every 2 years, every 4 years, or something like that? So that's my first question. And secondly, if I may, if we do get into a project and we realise very quickly that it's not going to provide the benefits we anticipated, because for all the best will in the world, until you actually do something, sort of roll your sleeves up and get into the detail, you don't know how complex something could be. How quickly can you almost like exit a project as well and stand it down and move on to the next one on the list? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I think there's a number of places where the ideas come from. We've recently hired quite a number of new officers from outside and other councils who bring ideas, and we've also brought in people from the private sector who bring ideas to the table. So it's very much it's a continual programme of work where we see opportunities. A lot of ideas have come through the ZBB, so the zero-based budgeting process, where we brought on senior officers together through facilitated workshops. And then we brought cross-service groups together, and there's been some amazing ideas come out of that. Most good ideas normally come from the front line of the people that are performing the jobs. And on that point, we are just about to launch our Bright Ideas scheme, where we're offering the officers at any level the opportunity to bring an idea, and there's a small reward for those ideas that are implemented. In terms of all of the ideas and projects are prioritised in a structured way, as Matthew mentioned. And in terms of projects that are going to fail, because of having such governance of the concept, the blueprint, and the business case, it means that we have done all of our due diligence. If something is not going to fly, then it gets cancelled out. And projects can go straight to business case if there is a small investment, and we think that the benefits are there and clear. But what's really important is that each stage we've run the data, we've run the analysis, we've looked at the process in detail, so a lot of work goes into that before it even gets now to business case. Matthew, would you like to come in?
So we operate in an agile approach, so let me give an example. So we run things, so that's jointly with Fiona's team and my team, called Solution Surgeries. So we sit down with the services on a regular basis and work through ideas. So we put them into a backlog, and we prioritise the backlog. So we've got to sit, and the honest answer is we've got too much change. There are too many improvements that we can make. By engaging across the organisation, there are some big stuff, some small stuff, some process change, some automation. There are so many things we can do to improve how we do things, and that's constant. The more we engage, the more improvement ideas we find. Some of them are technology, some of them are policy, some of them are cultural, some of them are a mixture of all those things, but it's a constant journey, and it's not a static. We don't do it every month, every quarter. We do it in an agile basis based on need or where we are in terms of the service, and we don't really ever fail in that respect. Is we learn, but we pivot our approach. Let me give an example. We spent a fair amount of time and resources looking at robotic process automation. It worked really well for 18 months, and we still have some RPA processes in there at the moment. What we've chosen to do is reuse some of the resources to focus on other automations and integration, so not having a singular methodology for looking at how we are improving our processes. We've opened up the toolkit. We can still do robotic process automation if there is a business case that stacks up, but within looking at some of those processes, we've got a variety of other options of how we can automate and integrate what we do. And again, part of the solution surgery is not technology, is not the start point. The resident is a start point, then the pain point is the next point, and then understanding what solution we apply to that. And again, that's what, as a corporate management team, we work together to understand how we prioritise those, but also make sure that we give We give the power back to the officers as well to make sure that they can suggest the ideas, and we can take things forward really, really quickly on some of those ideas. Some of them can be done now, i.e. someone suggested it, we go and do it, and that does actually happen. Sometimes it's a quick business case depending on if there's an investment. Sometimes it's a massive great business case because it might be a big process. So again, we have the right governance and the mixed approach to it to make sure we're successful. But it always makes me smile when I turn on my machine and I look at the backlog of improvements we can make, because we've had a number of solution surgeries. It tells me that they're the ideas out there. It's just understanding how we prioritise those and how we communicate the benefits of them both to our staff and to our residents as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bridges.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just really a question around our dealings with other authorities. I assume they're also in the same boat as us with the savings that we have to make, and I'm just wondering what discussions you've had with your equivalent in places like Harrow or Ealing in terms of brainstorming and sharing ideas on how you make these transformations. There must be some best practice that you're sharing, and vice versa.
I think, Matthew, you're probably best placed for that.
Yeah. To be honest, it happens all the time. So we're part of the West London Alliance. So my equivalent, chief digital officers or people that lead technology, we meet on a regular basis to both do the learning, understanding how we can collaborate together, but also we do joint projects, and we do that across London as well. Let me give an example. Is through the GLA we have damper mould sensors. So we're looking at how do we pilot putting damper mould sensors into some of our accommodation to understand as a preventative measure how do we stop damper mould. So we're collaborating together to understand it's a priority. We know from a housing perspective demand is going up. We know that the instance of decent homes need to be improved, but also if we can understand the condition of households before they become more costly, it's going to help across the public sector and local authorities in particular. So there are joint projects on things like connectivity and understanding the place-based agenda. Again, lots of work within the WLA. Personally, I spend quite a lot of my time out there talking to my peers, talking to some of the big providers out there to understand what we can learn from each other, how we can share ideas. Let me give a good example of that. So, everyone talks about AI and Copilot. Well, there's 200 local authorities that sit on a Microsoft transformation group around Copilot. There is a group of us London CIOs that, in fact, it's on Monday. We'll spend the day together understanding how we can collaborate, and we share business cases, we share approaches, we share what's working and what's not working, and we don't. The importance of doing that is you're not hearing it from the vendor, you're hearing it from the people that have done it, and I feel often really comforted that there's a good bit of QA, understanding how we do things across the piece, but also that we're happy to collaborate. So when we're looking at things like, as Councillor Mathers was saying, looking at the kind of report it, fly tipping function is, we're take the ideas and take the approaches from some of those local authorities that have already done it. Therefore, we're cutting down the effort, understanding their lessons. But sometimes we're ahead of the game in some of the things we're doing, and we will share our learning with others. So it's a really good place for us to be in, and and Tony as the chief exec does that with his peers from the WLA, but also across London councils as well. So the local authorities are becoming more supportive. I would argue that the government could do more to help us across the piece, rather than it be coming through vendors and through us supporting each other. And certainly from an IT perspective, when we've got similar systems, there could be a lot more that could be done to coordinate and consolidate what we do. But as local authorities, we recognise the need to collaborate and understand more is really important over the next 3 years, so we're spending a lot more time doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Garg.
You've mentioned quite a lot around the financial side and the return on investment. How are you working with the legal side of things like GDPR, the data you're gathering? How are you ensuring that, like you mentioned, recording people? How are you legally making sure it's within some sort of framework?
So in terms of, we work with a great sort of legal service who provide us advice for every sort of proposal where we're looking to make changes. We seek legal advice, and when we know there are service changes, we undertake equalities impact assessments as well, so that we always minimise and predict what the difference will be, what impacts may be. In terms of using that data robustly, we're all trained in terms of GDPR and have an annual assessment, and colleagues will be getting that very soon. And that's part of our annual assessment and annual assurance. And that's really important to us. So there's a high level of awareness. There's strong technology as well, so which manages the sort of data flows in and out of the business as well. When we propose changes around services, we go through a robust governance process and assessment process, so that any unintended consequences are swerved and avoided or minimised in any way. So we enter into change and recommend change to members and cabinet with the full sight of what those risks are and the mitigations that we need to have in place as well.
And our greatest challenge is not necessarily we always make sure we use the data in the right way. We always make sure we're legally compliant. It's using the data to drive evidence-based decisions and understanding our customers. So fundamentally, our challenge is how do we improve our business intelligence as an organisation? We have a plethora of data. It's all safe, it's all secure. It's how we use it to maximise it, to make the best possible decisions, recognising that local authorities are complex, recognising that people's needs are complex, and we have a plethora of systems that data sits on. The key at the moment is understanding how we use that data to drive better decisions, and that's where our real focus is, knowing that we're already compliant, we already understand what we're doing, we've gone over that hurdle, we even have an AI policy, so we know we're compliant in that respect. The trick is it gets harder moving forward with AI, so it becomes more complex, but we're ahead of the game in that respect. But you can always do more to harness the power of data, and that's our real challenge as an organisation.
All right, thank you. Councillor Banerjee.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question from me. Looking back through my notes from this evening, a lot's been mentioned in terms of benefits realisation. I just wanted to double check. Are we considering both financial and non-financial benefits, and also tangible and intangible? And where I'm going with this is especially thinking about the homelessness service and issues I've had in my own ward. There's a lot of stress and anxiety when you're homeless, so it's hard to quantify and put numbers to something like that. Are we sort of building that into our benefits realisation as well? Because it's hard to assign a pound value to things like this, so I just wanted to ask about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. It's both financial and non-financial, and I think it's a really good point when we start to think about outcomes and how we've served the residents, particularly vulnerable residents, and we need to think of creative ways of gathering that feedback. Dan, would you like to come in on that?
And absolutely, that's right. I mean, we know that it places a lot of pressure on families. It's hugely disruptive to families if they have children, where those children may need to move to another area and change schools, or even if it's a long journey into school, it can be incredibly impactful to families. So we build that into our programs and practice, and hence the supply of housing, whether affordable housing, whether it be through social rented housing or through private sector housing, is absolutely crucial, because it means then my case officers have some solutions to offer families fast and avoid that disruption. And what we did as officers during the autumn was to build a business case, which was then built into the budget, working with Andy and the team to make the case for more social rented housing. So there's 500 homes have been committed to within the budget over the next 3 years, 300 this financial year. We're actively progressing that and building the partnerships to deliver that at pace, and all of that contributes to not only a financial benefit, because we're spending less money on temporary accommodation. Let's be honest about that. I'd rather invest the money in resolving the situation or threat of homelessness that families face. But I also know that it delivers a better outcome. There's less disruption, less impact on other services. And just a few statistics. If a child unexpectedly changes school, there's research that shows that it can delay their learning by a whole school year. So that's incredibly impactful through changes through friendship groups and just different curricula and so on. So it's incredibly important that we do we do what we need to and deliver change very quickly, so that we deliver not just the financial benefits or the measured benefits, but also the other benefits that we know exist.
All right, thank you. And the perhaps the last one for me. We can be as transformatory as we like and as up-to-date and modern as we like, but at the core of this is making the relationship between the council and residents as best it can be. And what you've talked about in terms of drilling down on various aspects of council work is absolutely right, and looking at how we do those differently and better. You've got 27 projects, which is a lot, and I just wonder whether or not a different aspect to this. For years, we've looked at similar things that different departments do, and or similar things, bits of which different departments do, and they kind of like to own the bit that they've got because it's what they do or it's part of what they do, and they don't like to sort of let go of it. And yet, bringing together or solving or doing better those bits that could lie across 2 or 3 departments. So as you were saying, homelessness could be antisocial, could be crime or something, could be something else. Identifying something that can then be drawn together that isn't replicated, but it is drawn together and affects those different departments has got to be important. And how are we really concentrating on making sure that our residents know what's happening and know how to do what we're trying to achieve? I mean, if we don't get that bit right, get the whole engagement bit right, it almost doesn't matter how much better we are at doing our own thing. It needs to be bought into, because if ultimately residents get frustrated with not being able to get the answer or get the solution, it hasn't really transformed for them. So to what extent are we really aiming at that? And also, how are we making sure that we're not duplicating things because different departments like to own the same part of the same issue? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's as though you were a fly in the wall in the zero-based budgeting week 2, because that's exactly what we did. We brought people together and shared best practice. So you'll definitely see a direction of travel around how we can consolidate our prevention, how we can consolidate the front door, and that work's starting already in adult social care. But you can definitely see there's the same things happening in different parts. We assess, we engage, and we make decisions, and we can actually bring a lot of all that stuff together. So that's definitely the direction of travel in terms of the operating model and things that are coming out of the zero-based budgeting, and that definitely has started to break down the silos that exist across the service areas. And in terms of engagement with the residents, we have a very small communications team. So with our business cases, we build in the cost to engage. So with the fostering project, as Matthew said, we've engaged a specialist firm to engage and maximise the reach of that particular project. But it comes at a cost, but as long as it's built into the business case, we can capitalise it and recognise that is a cost for that project. So it's a really important part, because there's no point in changing something if you're not then targeting the residents who may well want that particular offer. And I think as we mentioned when we spoke before the meeting around education of residents, I think we need to do a lot more in signposting. The website needs a complete refresh. We need to think about how we can get people to self-serve more or go to the third sector more, but that all requires a lot of communication, and that's the work very much that's coming out of the communications plan.
All right, look, thank you so much. We've only scratched the surface, I suspect, in terms of our questions, but you can see the depth of interest, and you four provide an extraordinary amount of information and do an extraordinary amount of work, and we would like you to come back as we go through the municipal year for us to delve into further things, and also for you to tell us how things are going. I know that Matthew's hanging on for the next bit, but if Dan and Andy and Fiona wish to get out of here, then thank you so much, and thank you for all your help and assistance. Thank you. So, as I said, what we'll do now is to do forward plan and work programme, which to a large extent are to be noted. Since this is our last meeting before, probably I think the next one will be June, because I don't think we have it in May, do we all? That's right, yeah. It may be best to do some offline communication about future projects and the future work programme, because we'll have more of an idea about direction of travel in time for the next meeting, so we can deal with that at that point if everybody's happy with that. And just to note the Cabinet forward plan, and for everybody to be thinking, if you wouldn't mind, about issues that we can build into the work programme for the coming municipal year, and the sort of areas that we would like to delve into. I mean, certainly the transformation programme we need to keep as a constant, and maybe a constant topic on the agenda. Whether we specifically at each meeting have somebody come along is another matter, but I think just to have it there so that it's well in mind, because there's so much going on that we do need to keep an eye on, together with everything else that we deal with. We've got 12 heads of responsibility in our purview on this committee, and there's a lot to do. But I think that this transformation programme is one of them, and it seems to be working well at the moment. All right. So can we agree that as far as the forward plan is concerned and work programme are concerned, we'll deal with it in that way? All right. Thank you. Any questions on either of those two? All right. Good. Thanks. Right. So we will go into part 2 for item 6/8, which is presentation on cyber security. So give us a few seconds to go into part 2.